Alright, so all these videos are since last Thursday. Obviously, I have not been able to go through and listen to them all and label them all. The first three, I only listened to a few minutes, just long enough to hear the beginning of it. When I heard what was going on at the beginning, that let me know what call it was. And we're only on the third one. We've made what, like 4 or 5 videos so far at least. Now, mind you, I have Claire's permission to record and to post it. Oh yeah, that's not going to work. So, this media player, it won't work on. So I have to close it out and use the other one, and you'll see that in a second. We can't open such and such Claire appointment, third call. Yeah, like I said. Anyway, I show that stuff because if I don't, I get treated like it's something I'm making up. I don't know why somebody would believe I made something like that up, but that's my predator's excuse. There it goes. It's recording now. And there's more recordings since then, too. I was reviewing some of my online predators and gathering evidence to send you and screenshots that they've been doing this for years. I also sent you a screenshot showing you that there's a whole bunch of stuff from Natalie Bollinger. I did screenshot all of our messages in Facebook, so I can send you the proof that she was the one who thought she was in love with me, not the other way around. You'll be able to see I basically had to sidestep her "I'm in love with you" crap, and it was a situation where she made it seem like she was over it, And the thing is, I've actually sent Claire the evidence that this stuff is actually true. I sent that to Claire Jordan and to The Villain's Crime, I think is what the name of the true crime place is. Meanwhile, I don't trust these true crime places, but they reached out to me and they're talking a nice game. Let's hope that they're not like all the other ones. The other ones didn't even bother to try hearing my side. They just looked for little bits and pieces they could take out and make me out to be a monster, and that's not okay. I am afraid for good reason. I have evidence showing that I have every right and every reason to be afraid. And I'm being forced to go back to my predators to turn themselves in to themselves, which is against the law. But since I found those, I'll be able to send those to you. They've been sent, by the way. It also shows the messages between me and Natalie while I was in Virginia, which is where all of this supposed stalking stuff took place. That was the last time I ever saw her. All the stuff in between when I left Virginia and when Natalie was killed was all me trying to turn in the abuse that I was enduring. So I got to get treated like I was stalking somebody because I was asking for help stopping the abuse, and I let her know it was over too. The most screwed up part is that she wanted to believe her abusers, people who had actually physically assaulted her, strung her out on drugs, sexually assaulted her, and then she wanted to listen to these people about their opinions of what I'm going to do. Like, why was she listening to these idiots? Oh yeah, because they had drugs, you know? But what was I supposed to do to try to get help stopping the abuse? Tell her I had heroin? Well, not a chance in hell. I'm not going to go lying to somebody about having heroin, and I'm not going to go get heroin for anybody.
Yeah. I wouldn't even know how to do that. But anyway.
Obviously, I'm still slightly under the weather. I guess it was the flu. I had it last week.
Yeah, I am too, but
I'm recovering from it. I don't have it anymore.
I had
I'm
the
just
flu. I
recovering.
have a cold.
Anyway, so we reviewed most of it. I'm gonna. Where'd I put it now? I gotta let me sit this down and roll myself a cigarette while I'm looking for this. Phone numbers to call. There's a fucking shit ton of them. But the thing is that if you use the right words, they're supposed to do something about it. If you use the wrong words, they get to pull some bullshit. Like one of them is when it's frequent and ongoing abuse, then they have to do something about it, and the history of abuse also matters. So when they say it's in the past, that's not what they're supposed to do, as you're already aware. Um, but a lot of these places are going to try to pawn us off on other agencies, but it's also important to explain to them the safety risks with the police here and also their history. Because, like I said, Ray Rao, the former police chief, is no longer a police chief here, and I helped to turn in that situation. I also tried to turn in David Martinez, and many other people are as well. He actually already lost a job as a state trooper. There's also the fact that my history on paper is not the same.
The reason I'm bringing this up and the reason that I'm explaining this to her is because it's an important detail. David Martinez, when I had to try to turn in assaults from Andrew Wolnez and others, and David Martinez gets to come and arrest me for it, and he also got to interfere in investigations and prevent investigations from happening repeatedly, and those things are recorded. So when I'm allowed to get that far, instead of just generalizing, once I've generalized what it is that my talking point is going to be, then I start filling in important details. But if you interrupt me, then I don't get to fill in those important details. The specific names, the specific dates, the specific times, what it was over, the who, what, when, where, and why. But here you can see I'm already trying to get into letting her know the who, what, when, where, and why.
As the verifications, for example, they write on paper that Natalie Bollinger is a delusion, and obviously the actual evidence shows otherwise. So in each of these things that they're using against me, it's in each one of these court cases and all of the places that they sent me for these court cases are concerned, because they all intentionally lied about the situation. None of that is allowed to be brought up, not in court anyway. But the situation with the evidence of me literally being sent to the police officers who are committing crimes against me to turn them into themselves, well, all that does is alert the predator that they're in trouble or might potentially be in trouble. Now, if the police had made you turn in your ex to your ex, you would be fucking pissed.
Yeah.
And the fact is, that's what I'm having to do. I'm having to turn my predators literally into themselves by name. I'm having to try to turn in David Martinez to himself. I'm having to try to turn in Officer Sadler to himself. I'm having to try to turn in Lieutenant Silvera to himself. And you already got to speak to Nick Troxel. The paperwork that we went through today shows that Nick Troxel was bullshitting you the whole time, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's not okay. The fact that most of this evidence is gone because they were allowed to pull the mentally ill stuff on me is just that they were able to destroy evidence because of that. Oh, come on now, where is that piece of paper? Sorry, I'm looking for it because it's got the phone numbers on it that I need.
That's right. When you go in with a friend or family member when you first turn it in most occasions, they actually will do something about it. But if you make the victim go in by themselves and they're blown off, it's an uphill battle. But you have to fight that battle because if you don't, the consequences are worse. I'm living the consequences of not having a friend or family member who looks at the evidence and helps me to turn it in. Getting them to even hear my story is nearly impossible. With Claire, as soon as I start bringing up the evidence and her needing to look at it, she starts talking about her own experiences, and that's fine, but she needs to be aware of the actual evidence, and she verifies that she is aware of it. But that's the part also that we need to focus on turning in, and we need to focus on turning it into the right people. When she didn't have the ability to make the phone call to Marie Miller, that doesn't mean that the peer support worker that is at the very bottom of the totem pole is going to do anything about it. Now, the thing about the lowest man on the totem pole is that they're only allowed to push the housing like it's crack, even though you're not going to get housing. How many times have they lost the paperwork at TFCC? Meanwhile, they expect homeless people to be able to keep files and logs of all this stuff like we have a goddamn filing cabinet. No, we don't. You know, one rainstorm is enough to stick all of our papers together, and then basically, in the process of trying to separate the pages, we just end up tearing them into pieces. Obviously, that's not any good for anybody. Then we have to go back and we have to start over from the very beginning again, trying to get an address so we can get some mail.
Or I guess we need. Sorry, it's like I said. I got a lot of papers. There's over 4,000 pieces of paper evidence just in my storage alone. Is this it? Yep. All right. So the papers that I was just reading to you from, they're actually photocopies that I made because the original was falling apart, and now the photocopies are so used up that they're falling apart.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's one thing is about having everything you own in a tent. You gotta move everything around all the time to make room for your next project.
Yeah, I understand that.
Not like having a room in an office at all.
Mm-hmm.
This is also my kitchen, so all that stuff's in here. All my food's in here. It's basically like I got the equivalent of a pantry.
Yeah.
It's just also a toolbox and everything else. So, let's see. We went over the how can elder abuse be prevented. What are treatments for someone who is abused or neglected? Medical treatment for any. Well, we already went through that. What should I do if I think someone is being abused or neglected? If you or someone you know is being abused or neglected, contact Adult Protective Services in the United States, any healthcare provider, and I did that, the police, I did that, an ombudsman. This is a person or service you can contact to discuss neglect or abuse claims in long-term care. So I tried to contact the ombudsman while I was locked up, but I didn't have any assistance doing that, and getting the people that I was able to talk to on the phone to even answer the phone more than every couple of months was near impossible, and the ones that did answer their phone more than once every couple of months just were depressed and couldn't function because they were depressed. So then I get treated like I'm not trying to help myself because other people are getting depressed.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously it's not something that I can do anything about. I don't get to decide other people's depression or their functionality level when they're depressed. So some of the stuff that's in those evaluations outright states that TFCC and the police were wrong about the delusional thing, about the Natalie Bollinger thing, about all of that. So it's important that, because they knew, and that's what that piece of paper that I just read to you, it's from November of 2022. So they were aware back in November of 2022 that I was trying to turn these places in, and they sent me back to all of them. And by the way, I have that visit recorded as well because I was trying to turn in Lynn Lothman, and Lynn Lothman showed up.
Mhm.
He was the officer who responded. That'd be like trying to turn in, well, I'm sure you're aware, you definitely don't want to have to talk to your predator when you're trying to turn in your predator. It's against the law to make you turn him into himself, unless they call you mentally ill, in which case they get to pretend, oh, well, nothing is wrong, he's just making stuff up in his head, you know?
Mhm.
And obviously, with you being aware that that's not the case,
And my personal experiences saying that this is not just him. It's not
yeah.
just.
And she always goes back to that part. I can't get past that part in the story without her interrupting me to do this, exactly the same thing that we've heard in literally every single conversation with Claire repeatedly in most of those conversations. She's interrupting something that's very important, and instead of focusing on my details, she's again changing the topic, derailing the train, and making it about her again. And about her experience. And yes, her experience is important, but she didn't send me any evidence actually showing me that these abuses happened to her or anyone else. But I have sent her evidence that these abuses are happening to me. And she verifies to me repeatedly that she has seen the evidence of the abuse. Over and over again. Some of it she has seen. And when it finally got to the point that she did look at some of that evidence, it took so long to get it to happen. All right, so there's a weed whacker going off in one direction and somebody yelling in the other direction. My phone doesn't usually pick it up, but a lot of times my recording device will. However, my recording device is off. So whatever they're yelling about, it shouldn't affect the video recording too much. You shouldn't have to hear too much of the yelling, but it will derail me.
Sean. Like it's an ongoing thing where they treat people this way.
Now we're going to the. Oh, that's not right. Hold on a second. Did I get them out of order?
Obviously, I'm trying to stay on
there it is.
topic.
So
I've
we
got
tried the
papers in my hand
police,
to read
and
to
we
her.
tried adult protective services and healthcare providers. Let's see if there's any more Medicaid or Medicare fraud units. These teams check into cases of health, medical, and financial abuse or neglect. So that one right there is the one that we have to try to turn all of them into here in Tillamook.
And I've tried that one before, but we're going to do it again.
Yes, ma'am. The together thing is important. Now, it's most important to do it together right away because after they've committed crimes, they basically lock you and any help that you have out. But if we record it, then we have proof that it's happening. So one of the things that I'm going to look up on the computer here is some of the local news, and we'll try to get a hold of them too. Because after we make these phone calls, hopefully we'll be able to. Are you able to type up an email?
I can, but not right this second. I'd have to be inside, so.
Yes,
ma'am. And I would like to not discuss these things in front of my children.
Yep, I figured. But I also, like I was saying, if it's a friend or family member turning it in, it's treated much differently than if it's just me. And if a friend or family member expresses concern and lets them know that the actual evidence does exist, then that does help get started on the process. And if you make an email like that and add some of that stuff that I sent to you in it, and then make sure that you add me to the email so that they can see that I'm able to see it, and Others are able to see it. That's part of the situation.
Okay.
Basically, if there's something that we send to the police, we also make sure that we send it to the media at the same time in the same email. That way, the police know that the media can see it. Um, but the agencies that we're going to be calling today are Adult Protective Services. I guess is the first one on the list, and then we already tried the cops. Obviously, they weren't interested in investigating themselves.
That's a no-go. They don't care.
But there's also the local healthcare provider, and I'm going to have you make the call with me on that. Now, because you're a friend or family member, it's actually not necessary to sign a whole bunch of pieces of paper for you to be able to be involved in these calls. Where I have to sign the pieces of paper is if you are
Like the
requesting my
waiver
medical records.
and all that stuff. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yep. So instead of rolling a cigarette, I just found
Finishing my sentences is always a bad idea. You are always going to go in the wrong direction just because this is actually a complicated situation. There's a difference between your assumption and the reality. Your assumption, what you think I'm going to say, and the reality of what I'm actually going to say.
one of my little snubs.
Okay, so while we work on this, I'm gonna go back inside, but I'm still listening. I'm not gonna say much, but as soon as we're on a call, I'll walk back outside. I just want to make sure I have as much.
So one of the things that people who offered to help me wanted to do is they wanted to say that they couldn't talk. They could listen, but they couldn't talk, so they really couldn't help me. Or, they would try to set up a call for a time when they could do most of the talking because people have already decided, for the most part, based on their bias before they enter into any negotiation, which is what it becomes. A friend or family member would help you to turn it in right away. Anybody else is going to try to make a bargain. They're going to try to make a trade. They're going to promise you help in exchange for helping them. But the thing is that they're not going to follow through in most of these situations. They're not able to. They get locked into their own situation and they're stuck on their own situation. And also their own assumptions, their own bias. One of the things that's been consistent with her is that she tells her story over and over and over again. And the ones that she tells consistently with the same information and not conflicting information, the easier it is to believe her. And for the most part, I do believe her. There's some stuff where, she thinks it's just a little thing and it doesn't really matter who takes responsibility for it as long as responsibility is assigned. That's not necessarily the best thing to do because it might be at least somewhat on the dishonest side, and every one of those little things is going to kick all of us in the butt. I did desperate things because people were actually harming me. I was treated like I was stalking somebody because I was asking that person to stop the abuse, to call off the dogs, the people who were assaulting me over things that literally never happened. Natalie pretended that I stalked her, but the emails and the messages between Natalie and I show that while she was pretending that I was stalking her, we were friends. And she was insisting that we go out for my birthday. You don't insist on getting a cake and a present and going out for somebody's birthday if they're stalking you. You don't tell somebody that you love them if they're stalking you. And when I left Virginia, that should have been the end of it. If it hadn't been for rumors that were started over that situation where I didn't do anything wrong. You try to twist things to try to convince people that I'm some horrible person who is out to touch little girls, and meanwhile Natalie was a grown adult and we weren't friends over her vagina. That is obvious to anyone who looks at the evidence, but are you going to look at the evidence? Is Claire going to be able to focus on my evidence and why these parts are important, or is she going to interrupt repeatedly to tell me about herself? The same stories I've already heard many times. Every one of our recordings, you can hear her telling the same stories and interrupting me at the same exact parts. And it is super frustrating. And it does make me afraid because we don't get anything accomplished except trading stories. And the number one thing that you are supposed to do when a victim comes to you because they're being abused is you're supposed to be quiet. Listen to their story without interruption. Listen to their story without interruption. I'm going to say that again. Listen to their story without interruption. Your situation is not their situation. Therefore, telling them your stories is useless. It doesn't help them to turn in the abuse. And it also doesn't do what you think it does, which is let them know you understand. I don't care if you have a story that you can compare. You could have lived a perfect life where nobody has ever harmed you, and there is no basis in your life for comparison. But because you have the job that you have, I'm being sent to you for help. Or because you are a nice person, you offered to help. But you're being naive or ignorant of my situation means the decisions that you oftentimes decide that you're going to make these decisions for me because you've decided since I'm mentally ill that I need that kind of help. No, I don't need you to give me instructions and order me around. I need you to listen to me, look at the evidence of the abuse, and turn that in with me. Like you would with anybody that you actually care about. I would hate to think that when stuff happens to your kid, that you would do the same thing to your kid that you do to me. If your son came to you and said that he's getting beaten on by multiple kids at school every day, and the teachers won't do anything, and you're getting beaten up worse for going to the teachers, but then if you don't go to the teachers, they'd say it's your fault for not going to them. Yeah, you're going to want to do something. If your daughter is raped and she tells you that she's raped, you're going to try to turn that in immediately. You know exactly what to do in that situation. And it doesn't matter if it's a 9-year-old girl, an elderly person, or a disabled person. It's the same exact thing. You have to do the same thing if it's a disabled person. If they try to turn it in and they're treated like they're schizophrenic, and you know that they're not schizophrenic, and you know what they're trying to turn in is the truth, why are you stalling? Why are you talking about yourself? Why are you interrupting so often?
Battery charge is possible.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. Also, that makes perfect sense because, I got a lot of stuff to go through to find the proper crap. I think this is my health card. Primary care provider, Tillamook County Community Health Centers, which is the one with, the one that we were trying to go through last time when that other John feller we had to talk to, and he was the investigator that basically what his job was to do was to decide if Tillamook County Community Health Center is willing to work with me again because they tried pretending they was scared of me because I tried turning them in for refusing to do their jobs as mandatory reporters. Have we established a pattern of people doing that yet?
I think we have. Yeah, I think there's a pretty strong pattern.
And there's a lot of paper evidence.
Now that right there, we're both getting to have a little bit of a laugh about that, but it's actually not funny. Like, it's not just her and myself and I believe his name is Florence. Um, like, there are so many people, not just the three of us, that are actually recorded. There's a lot more people that are recorded too. The same thing. We go to these resources for the help that we need, and then there's the bullshit that you're going to get. They're going to deflect. When you try to turn in abuse, they want to deflect. Your friend or family member's job is to keep them from deflecting, to keep them from trying to change the subject. And that's difficult when the friend or family member that you have to try to turn this in with is doing the same thing they do. For different reasons, but the same thing. Changing the subject, interrupting the story. Your job is to make sure that the victim's story is heard and that the evidence is seen, that it's taken seriously. And the more you know about the situation, the more you know about the victim and the victim's situation, the better help you're going to be to them.
And there's a lot of video evidence and a lot of audio evidence. And yeah, so we have some numbers on here. It says important numbers, emergency 911. We know that one, but they're literally not going to do anything.
Nope.
Customer service, physical, mental, or substance use, language access. So that one we might be able to call. Transportation, NW rides. Probably not that one. Probably not the dental one. Probably not the pharmacist line or the electronic payer ID. So we'll probably end up calling customer service on that one.
Okay.
And I might look up. It has a phone number for the primary care provider. So, do you know how to do three-way phone calls?
On this part, we're going to try to make a
I've never done
three-way
it on
phone
my
call.
phone.
It didn't
All right,
actually
because
work.
I was trying to do that earlier when that other person called, because I was thinking it might have been the people from TFCC finally getting, or the people from CARE finally getting back to me, but that wasn't it. So,
Yeah, there should be a little symbol.
I'm going to pause it. What we ended up doing is I got this other phone, and I ended up having to get it activated. This is a phone for in case I end up with some agent giving out my phone number and then I got a bunch of restricted calls again. So I got another phone that I can use in that situation. And also, I have one phone that I can make a call on and another phone that I can record the call on. And that helps to keep me safer. Of course, the problem is instead of having somebody to help me to turn it in right away, the first time it happens, I get blown off until these situations have happened literally hundreds of times. The cops already decided they're not going to do their job. I'm not considered a human being to them. I'm pretty sure if you check my DNA, I'm a 100% human being. I'm not an alien. I'm not from outer space. I'm not a half goat man. I'm a human being.
It says add call.
yes, ma'am. We might have to. Do you know anybody that we can borrow for 5 minutes just to make sure that we can do the three-way calling and make it work?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Let me ask.
Okay.
Alright, so I'm actually going to take the time to end it there because the rest of the video is us trying to make that work. Um, Obviously, I have to go through and see what's in these before I can actually post them up. Um, some of them are just situations where I was going for a walk, but it was during a time of day when I've had difficulties with people, or I've had to go somewhere where I've had previous issues with the same person more than once. Most of the time, going to a business doesn't make that an issue. You know, obviously, unless somebody is literally just hanging out at that business all day long, which has happened in some of these instances. But in most of them, it's just a chance encounter. People got to go to a gas station and get gas. So I'm going to end this video, and you can see where a lot of my frustration is. Um, I don't get to tell my story because it triggers a memory, and they want to tell a story. We don't get to the point where we actually turn my stuff in with another person. But she also talks about how, she has recognized that she does need to, when these things happen, having someone else turn it in is what's effective. If I try to turn it in alone, I just get the mentally ill treatment, and we discussed that. Yes, she is able to verify through her own experiences that those things are true. But also, I need her to be able to verify with my evidence. And that requires listening to my story and reading the evidence, actually looking at the evidence I send her. And of course, if there's reasons that she's not able to, that's not my fault, but it is important because it's part of the circumstances. It's not that I'm not making the effort. It's not my fault that other people have children. It's not my fault that other people were threatened. It's not my fault that these things happen to people. It's not my fault that your husband loses your job. It's not my fault if some pervert touches your kids. At the same time, I've spent my life protecting specifically children and the disabled and minorities. I mean, this isn't something that's just started as soon as Natalie was killed.